Now hear the word of the Lord from Luke 2:21 through 40. 8 days later, when the baby was circumcised, he was named Jesus, the name given him by the angel even before he was conceived. Then it was time for their purification offering, as required by the law of Moses after the birth of a child. So his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. The law of the Lord says, if a woman's first child is a boy, he must be dedicated to the Lord. So they offered the sacrifice required in the law of the Lord, either a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. At that time, there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. That day, the Spirit led him to the temple. So when Mary and Joseph came to present the baby Jesus to the Lord, as the law required, Simeon was there. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace, as you have promised. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people, Israel." Jesus' parents were amazed at what was being said about him. Then Simeon blessed them, and he said to Mary, the baby's mother, "This child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall, and many others to rise. He has been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul." Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. She was the daughter of Phanuel from the tribe of Asher, and she was very old. Her husband died when they had been married only 7 years. Then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and prayer. She came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. When Jesus' parents had fulfilled all the requirements of the law of the Lord, they returned home to Nazareth in Galilee. There the child grew up healthy and strong. He was filled with wisdom, and God's favor was on him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Welcome, Sojourn. Peace be with you. Full house baptism Sunday. Let's go. Let's go. I imagine we have some guests and family here, so thanks for coming. It's a great day for us. My name is Jonah. I'm one of the pastors here at Sojourn, and part of our mission is to build each other up as instruments of truth, beauty, and goodness. Those are the core values of our church. That's what we love as a church, truth, beauty, and goodness, and that's what we're trying to cultivate in the lives of one another. And so I'm excited. This Wednesday, there's a new group starting up called The Rabbit Hole, and I didn't name it. Creative people named it, and maybe you're saying, what is the rabbit hole? And I think the invitation is to come and go down the rabbit hole. What's going on is that middle section of our values, beauty. What does that mean? Why do we care about beauty? What does it matter to us? Why do we love it? Wednesday, 7 p.m., and it's going to be an ongoing group. This group is going to get together to talk about beauty and to talk about the beautiful things they're interested in, the things that make their heart beat fast. Maybe some people are going to be talking about the art they're making, the art they want to make, the art they want to learn how to make. The hope is, you're like, what's going to happen when we're there? No plans, no idea. You get creative people together in a safe space to share ideas, and we're trusting that something beautiful is going to come out of it. And so how did this come about? One of our members, Eric Harrow, said, I want to get the artists together and work on making things beautiful. And we said, go do it. So if you go to church here and you're like, I want to do something, just you have not because you ask not. That's what the Lord said. He's like, I want to do it and I want to lead it. So he'll be serving as the facilitator for that, again, starting this Wednesday night. If you're interested in beautiful things, if beautiful things make your heart beat fast, if you're interested in making things more beautiful, if you're interested in helping people make beautiful things, the rabbit hole is for you. This Wednesday, 7 p.m., here at the building. No like RSVP or anything required. Just show up, and excited to see what comes of it. I think we have 117 baptisms here in the next few minutes. So I'm going to do like a 6-minute sermon here so you guys can get to Cracker Barrel on time. There's really just one thing I want to say to you guys today, and that's from Hebrews chapter 13, and we see it played out here in the Gospel of Luke. Hebrews 13, I'm going to be off the slides a little bit, Nolan, sorry, but Hebrews 13 says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yesterday, today, and forever. And as I was reflecting on this and trying to think, why is this such good news? I was transported to early in my childhood. The year is 1992. I was 10, or maybe 11, I'm not exactly sure. I was born in 1982, late 19th century students. George H.W. Bush was running for president. I'm going to need some help from the boomer and up crowd because it was rough at the 9 a.m. So if you're like 50 plus, you guys remember who was H.W. running against in 92? Anybody? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. And now, students, you'll have a hard time relating to this, you teenagers. But there was a time where it wasn't constant commercials about political candidates, especially during election season. And so HW came out with an ad that set the world on fire. You can go YouTube this thing. It was so brilliant, and nothing like this had really ever happened before. It's trying to make the pitch of which one of these positions resonates with you more? And they blurred the face out, which was big technology back in the early 1990s. And so candidate A says position A, candidate B shares a contrary position. And it's which one of these do you like more? Who do you resonate with more? And then the big reveal was they were both Bill Clinton. Zing! Right? And HW, he just roasted him. And it showed such a lack of integrity, such a willingness to shift positions to try to garner popularity. And by and large, the American population was just disgusted by it. In 1992, after that, later, Bush's son, W., who I'm partial to because he walked the hallowed halls of the Silver Street Elementary School, this building we were in, and the No Child Left Behind, George W. Bush was here. Legend has it, I can't confirm this is true, but that breezeway, the glass hallway, was built to connect these two buildings because President Bush needed an enclosed space to walk through on his child tour. So he blessed the building, that's why it's so holy. He used a similar tactic as his daddy from against John Kerry. You remember the Bush-Kerry race? This is one of the first elections that I was really emotionally invested in, and when I think of John Kerry, I think of flip-flopper. Do you guys remember that ad campaign? Anybody? Just roasting Kerry for being a flip-flopper. Here's a quote of him talking about Vietnam. Here's a quote about him saying something else about Vietnam. Here's him on the economy one way. Here's him on the economy the other way. And we were disgusted. This is back when things like inconsistencies bothered us. Ooh, too soon, shots fired. But again, it just showed such a lack of integrity, inconsistency in opinions, and that really mattered to us at the time. Kerry got crushed for being a flip-flopper, and W won. I think, at least at the time, the reason this resonated so deeply with the American people is because most of us know what it's like to live under inconsistency. I had a boss one time that twice a month would come into staff meetings and announce that the meeting would start with him saying, "I figured it all out. And here's everything that was wrong, and here's the new mission of the organization." And you just would walk into these meetings because you didn't know what was going to happen, what was going to change. If you've never had a boss that way, and you're in your 30s, I bet you know somebody that just being around them makes your chest go tight. You know that feeling? Because you don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what they're going to do. They're unpredictable. They're inconsistent. Inconsistent people are dangerous. They're scary because they're so unpredictable. And maybe it's fine one time and awful the next, and you never know. When you're around these people, particularly if they have authority or influence over you, It produces such a low-grade tension and anxieties in our souls all the time. And I really hope at least a handful of us in here know what it's like to have a consistent friend. Isn't it so nice when someone does what they said they were going to do? Do you know anybody like this? When they follow through and this happens over time and they become predictable? How comforting and safe is consistency. And this is why that verse in Hebrews is such good news, that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's so lovely. He's not a flip-flopper. He doesn't change his positions to try to garner social favor. For time's sake, I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but there's this like weird popular sentiment now where people will say things like, oh, I don't like the God of the Old Testament. I like the God of the New Testament. Have you heard this? Anybody heard somebody say this before? Yeah. That's just, the only way you can say that is either being incredibly naive, like you get your Bible instruction from a YouTube video, which please don't do that. Or it's just, they're just lying to you. There is no God of the Old Testament or God of the New Testament. There's just Jesus. It's the same God in the Old Testament as it is in the New Testament. We can't just like pick and choose what we want out of the Bible, because then we'll do things like, I like the stuff about personal responsibility. I don't really like the stuff about foreigners and immigrants, so I'm going to ignore that. I like the stuff about foreigners and immigrants. I don't really like the stuff about sexuality, so I'm going to leave that. When we do that kind of stuff, the Bible, I don't know what you guys know what the biggest sin is. I'll tell you what the big one is. This is the worst one, and it's the one that the American church barely never ever talks about. It starts with P. Pride. That's the worst. That's the one that destroyed everything. That's the one that distorts the heart more than anything else. It's functionally saying, I know better than God. I put myself in the place of God. If we do that, that arrogance will distort our souls, but even more so, we'll miss out on the beauty of the Scriptures, the beautiful, wonderful consistency that has been given to us. And so I'm just throwing this out there. I feel like I'm talking real fast. If you have questions about the Bible, which if anyone tells you that there's nothing confusing in the Bible, they're either really bad at reading the Bible or they're lying to you. There's stuff in there that's strange and confusing. This is what pastors are for. This is why it's so important to be grounded in a local church. So if you have questions, there's 6 pastors here that would love to help you out with the Bible. Bring your questions there. There are confusing things in the part of it, but we work through it and we learn so we can see how beautifully consistent the Scriptures are, that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This is what Luke is showing us here in this story about, you're like, this is the naming and circumcision of Jesus. What's going on here? Repeatedly in Luke, you'll get verses like what we got earlier that Carrie read for us. Verse 22, it says, then it was time for their purification offering, as required by the law of Moses, after the birth of a child. That as required by the law, or according to the Scriptures, or in response to Moses, this idea that Jesus' parents, Mary and Joseph, were faithful people. They followed the law. Jesus followed the law because they believed the Bible. It's a very subtle but very consistent way that Luke is showing us that this is one continuous story. Jesus agreed with Moses. Jesus doesn't fight the Old Testament. Luke is trying to show us that Jesus is not so much a new thing as he is the full thing, where once there was shadow, now there is substance. Or y'all like eating? Anybody eating? Yeah. You get an appetizer. And then you get the main course. It's the same meal. It's not like we call these things 2 separate meals. So the Old Testament is like the appetizer to prepare us for the main course. And then here comes Jesus, and this is the big deal. While his parents are at the temple, we met 2 characters named Simeon and Anna. Again, if you've been with us in Luke for a while, this is another example of something profound Luke is showing us. He gives us a story of a man, and if you've been coming, what happens after Luke gives us stories about men? Stories about women. Boom, man, woman, man, woman, man. And here it's like, we've got a guy prophet, Simeon. We got a girl prophet, Anna. He's showing us how this was so radical that women had such a prominent place in the ministry of Jesus. They're side by side with him all the time. And so we get the story of Simeon and the story of Anna. Both of them are prophets. Both of them are speaking the words of God on behalf of God. They're faithful people, just like Mary and Joseph were, which when you hear me say faithful, think trust. They trust God. And that's really important to catch because it said they were very old. Very, very old. Simeon, if you noticed, in verse 29, he says, "Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace as you have promised." God said, "You will see the Messiah." He's so old that after he sings the song, he's like, "Thank God I can die." You know, because there's like, I'm 43, but I have heard that as you get older, it's difficult. It's already difficult. After this, when I walk down here, my left knee is going to feel funny because I've been standing for a long time. But listen, being 80 in the United States of America is not the same as being 80 in the Middle East in the first century. There's no Tylenol. There's no injections to go into your L7 to relieve spinal pain. These were old people who had been waiting for a long, long, long time. Simeon doesn't see a new God on the scene when Jesus comes. He sees the God he's always known keeping his promises. He sees the God who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And listen to what he said. "I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for" which people? But except for those people, right? Well, what about the ones we don't like? What about the ones that voted for Clinton? All people, which this was a revolutionary idea in the Judaism of the time. It was not a popular thought to think that God's salvation through Messiah was going to come to the Gentiles. But you know what said it would? The Bible. Simeon studied the scriptures. He wasn't as captivated by his culture and tradition. And so he knew that when Messiah comes, he will be a light for all people. He says it again for us, lest our dull ears don't hear. He says, he is a light to reveal God to the nations. He is the glory of your people, Israel, a beacon of hope shining out from Israel to fill the dark world with light. From the beginning, God's plan has been to rescue everyone. And that should make all of us a little bit uncomfortable. All of those people, yes, he's called them home too. He's come to restore everyone, to reconcile everyone. And this plan that was promised as far back as Genesis 3 is being fulfilled now in Jesus. And since Simeon knows God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, he knows what will happen to this child. So he turns to Jesus' mother Mary and says to her, "This child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall, many others to rise. He's been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul." He's saying a mother's going to have to watch her son die. How could he say that? He's read the Bible. He knows the story free from his cultural blind spots and traditions. He knows that Jesus is the one by whose stripes we will be healed. Jesus is the one who will be pierced for our transgressions. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. We each have turned to our own way, but the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Simeon knew that Messiah came not to be a political ruler to overthrow Rome, but that he would be a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest griefs, to carry our wounds that we might be brought home. That idea would have been so nuts at the time. That's why you see the Pharisees fussing and getting so upset with Jesus. It's why you see the disciples so confused when Jesus begins promising them, for us it'll be in Luke chapter 9, that he's going to die. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Simeon knows this, and he's had a long runway of faithful trust. After Simeon, we meet Anna. She was widowed young. This translation says she was 84. It's also possible that she had been a widow for 84 years. The text's a little ambiguous, so take your pick. She's either like 100 or 84. Either way, the Bible calls her very old. And if the Bible calls you very old, like, you old, okay? Which means that she was widowed young and spent her life waiting. She's given the title prophet, and she spent her days proclaiming the word of God to whoever would listen around the temple. You ever wonder what that might have been like? In such a male-dominated patriarchal culture? She sees Simeon. She sees the child, and she begins praising God. After a hard but faithful life, one of hopeful trust and expectation, listen to what she does. She talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. Simeon rejoices in the temple, and then Anna goes and spreads the good news to anyone who will listen. This is one of those stories where it's easy to fly by because it's kind of awkward for us, like Jesus getting circumcised and named, and why is this in the Bible? But there are real jewels here worthy of deep reflection. Like this is the kind of story where you can go to lunch and just hang out and say, what stood out to you there? What do you think this was like? For me, what resonates is, I don't know how to say it right, you guys. I long so much for someone to do what they say they will do. My house was built in 1884. And like the most base level, it's like, can you imagine if the contractor showed up when they said they would? It cost what they said it would cost, and they finished when they said they would finish. I would take something just simple like that. I so long for safe, trustworthy, dependable friends. All the anxiety and uncertainty sometimes just feels like it's just too much. And what this story is reminding me is that we have one such as this available to us. And I can't help but wonder what might happen to my own life if I could wake up to the reality of how trustworthy Jesus is, of how dependable he is, of how faithful and consistent he is. What would I do if I knew he always follows through? What would I do if I knew these promises he gave to me were true? And sometimes at church, we turn this into this like pie in the sky, happy clappy Christianity where it's like everything is great and it's all going to be fine. But just let me remind you, we're 2 chapters into the Gospel of Luke right now, and think of some of the main characters so far. I imagine someone in here feels like John the Baptist's mom, Elizabeth. You can't have children, and you waited your whole life wrestling with infertility and that unfulfilled longing. Maybe somewhere like Anna, tragedy struck early in life, and you've spent most of your life waiting. Maybe you're like Simeon, carrying the weight of the pain of old age. Like, I don't know. I've been wrestling with what did it feel like for Simeon to get out of bed in the morning? 80-something years old in some straw bed, no air conditioning in the Middle East. What did it feel like for Anna to slowly age, single and alone, and to keep prophesying in the temple in such a male-dominated culture? What was it like for Mary as her baby grew to walk through the marketplace and feel the eyes on her? What I'm trying to show you guys is that these faithful people that trusted God endured so much pain. And I think the only way we can wait amidst pain is through trust. Confident hope. And if you can't just flip the trust switch on and be like, you know what, today I will trust again. Especially if you've had experiences with people that prove to you how untrustworthy most people are. This is a side note, I guess. Let the reader understand. Beware the person that tells you, just trust me. Whether it's a pastor or a president or a sister or a dad. I would tell you, but you probably can't handle it. Just trust me. No, that's not how you build trust. Trust is built through a pattern of consistency. showing up, doing what we say. And this is one of the reasons the scriptures are so reassuring and beautiful. Because Jesus is the fulfillment of all of these Old Testament promises. If you follow the pattern of the scriptures, you will see a God who says, and then he does what he says. He has not asked us for a blind trust, but he has proven himself. He kept the law that he created. He fulfilled its promises, even beginning as a small child. So, I wanted to remind you guys of something and then give you a question to consider. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Worthy of your trust. He is consistent. He is dependable. If that is true, how is he inviting you to trust him? As we see the text, this story, and pretty much every story in the Bible, the waiting, the long hope, is usually filled with a lot of pain. So maybe the question is, how is God inviting you to trust him amidst the pain? What is the pain that he's inviting you to endure as a way of trusting him? Mary, Elizabeth, Zechariah, Anna, Simeon, Joseph, John the Baptist, and Jesus himself show us that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And they show us that one day our pain will be transformed into joy. The waiting will give way to rejoicing. Or to cheat ahead to the story a little bit, the agony of crucifixion on Good Friday always gives way to the joy of resurrection on Easter Sunday. How is God inviting you to respond to the reality that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever? If you're able, stand with me and we'll pray and celebrate some baptisms.